So hello everyone and welcome back to the Shredding Skeptic. I'm your host, Shredder Steve. Let's hop back on the track and talk a little bit about creativity today. So hello everyone and welcome back to the track here on the Shredding Skeptic. We are going to do a little hill climb here in the Ford Focus ST and discuss a little bit about creativity and some of the lessons that I learned in 2015 and my first year on YouTube. Now I know I didn't have a 1-year anniversary video or anything like that, but given that I was in the middle of a move, it wasn't a huge priority. So again, I apologize for the brief absence over the last little while, but I've been trying to convalesce, I suppose, and figure out the next best direction for the channel. As you've probably seen from some of the last few videos, I've been a little bit off topic. So we're going to try to get back to some classic Shredding Skeptic on the track here and discuss a little bit of psychology today and creativity, so stay tuned. Alright, so I'll leave a link to the article in the description below if you guys want to check out 5 steps to a more creative you. Now, in this article, they do talk about a few different ways that you can increase your creativity. Now, these are lessons that did mirror a lot of my experience in 2015, and the first one up is aiming for quantity. So the idea here is to don't wait until you have everything perfect, until everything is set up exactly the way you want. Basically, use what you have and put out what you can, and try to just get out as much as possible. In the process of making all these mistakes, you're going to figure out what it is that you don't like, and that will help direct you towards what it is that you do like. Alright, so step number 2, be willing to be alone, feel a lot, and look deep. Now, one of the things that tends to be fairly consistent among creative people is they tend to hear this siren's call of solitude and feel emotions and sensations deeply. And they also don't tend to be all that opposed to doing the hard work necessary for self-inquiry and learning about yourself a little bit more deeply. So if you're going to be getting into a creative pursuit, it often helps to take a little bit of time to yourself and figure out how to listen to what it is that you like, rather than being surrounded by other people and becoming, I suppose, heavily influenced by what it is that they like. Alright, next up in step number 3, we have remaining playful and being open to experience. Now, openness to experience is one of the big 5 personality traits, and it tends to reflect, well, a love of, I guess, problem solving and intellectual openness, engagement with new ideas. It also has effective openness in terms of willingness to experience a full depth of human emotion and a preference for gut decisions and empathy. And finally, the preference for aesthetics, where there's always a preference for art, beauty, things like this. Now, if you are able to cultivate an openness to experience like this and remain playful, you are likely to develop and cultivate this state of mind that will allow you to, I guess, incorporate a number of your different fields of knowledge together in new and interesting ways. Now, the best way to destroy this process, I suppose, would be to maintain a rigid mindset and, I guess, believe that you've come to the conclusion that you have now established the one objective truth of the universe, and there's really nothing left to learn. This will probably stifle your appreciation for things like art and beauty and nature, and you should probably do your best to avoid that kind of rigid mindset. Now, I've certainly been guilty of perhaps not being as mindful as I ought to have been in the present moment, and I found that one of the best ways to do that is to simply perceive rather than to judge. Now, this is one of the reasons I greatly prefer the Big 5 personality inventory compared to something such as the Myers-Briggs personality inventory, which sort of creates a dichotomy between judging and perceiving, as if, you know, people tend to only do one or the other, when in fact we tend to do both all of the time. Now, it doesn't really have a great deal of predictive value as well, and that's probably my biggest gripe with the Myers-Briggs. The Big 5 personality inventory creates, I guess, much more flexibility and room for nuance, rather than trying to box people into individual categories. Now, step 4 talks a little bit about how we have to be, adopt, and hire from outside perspectives. Now, what this prevents is a kind of intellectual and, I guess, political or emotional stagnation, where everybody who thinks a certain way is sort of trapping themselves within an echo chamber of only those who share the same ideas, and this is really a great way of killing off any creativity that you might have, because it will really stop you from bringing in outside information. And so, just as we get set up for our final point in the article, I wanted to head back to Bannock Brae in a Formula car just to see if we can whip around these tracks a little bit faster and crank up that speed. So strap yourselves in, because the final point for this article is really about the value of procrastination. Now, one of the things mentioned in the article here regarding the value of procrastination is basically, as long as you are intrinsically motivated and passionate about solving a problem, procrastinating on a task can sometimes yield better benefits than relentlessly trying to focus on solving that problem right away. So again, this isn't sort of a catch-all excuse to do nothing all the time, but sometimes it is best to take a step back and try to figure out strategy without worrying so much about tactics. Now, this could be due to the notion that an incomplete task is probably taking up more space in your mind than a completed task, and once you have done everything you wanted to do, it doesn't tend to occupy too much of your thought process anymore. However, if you keep a number of different projects on the go at the same time, it tends to keep that information in working memory a little bit longer. But once you've generated your ideas in a creative and playful manner, it's time to get intentional and focus on what it is that you want to produce. So I guess that brings me round to a rather obvious question as to what exactly is it that I want to produce here on the Shredding Skeptic channel. And, well, I guess it's going to have something to do with music, something to do with games, and probably something to do with psychology. But right now I'm not really holding myself to any sort of fixed or rigid pattern for how I'm going to be able to put that together. Right now I'm just sort of spitballing ideas. This is sort of what we're coming up with right now. So, I mean, I know it is a little bit unusual to be talking about psych talks and mixing that in with games and music and all kinds of things, but that's what I find amusing at the moment, and I hope you guys find it amusing as well. So I definitely want to thank you guys for joining me here on the Shredding Skeptic today as we talk a little bit about creativity with the help of our friends over at Psychology Today. Now, in my last video, I asked you guys what you thought would be a good direction for the gaming channel in terms of what games I should be experimenting with, and Brain Juice, you had a really great idea of doing survival games, and one of the reasons I really do enjoy survival games is I think they're a great way of exploring the human condition. The racing games here that I'm playing, well, I guess for me, I just find them enjoyable, and it's quite easy to capture footage like this from them, so that's probably one of the reasons I'm doing it. But I don't know, I think with racing games, it does kind of, I don't know, hit a certain primal note for me, because despite the fact that your surroundings are, well, completely harmless, you know, grass, trees, bushes, fences, all of that stuff becomes completely fatal at 300 kilometers an hour. So there's an interesting juxtaposition of this mundane environment that looks quite pretty, but all of it will kill you if you crash. The game you can just reset, obviously, but what it is representing, like many games do, represent a either fictional or as real as possible version of something that exists in reality. This game simulates the high-speed racing of, well, formula cars, open-wheeled racers of all kinds, go-karts, touras, whatever you want, and yeah, death awaits you around every corner if you don't get on those brakes early enough. So no, not a lot of people are into racing games, so fundamentally for these talks, I'm hoping they just offer something pretty to look at in the background while we can remain focused on what it is the video is discussing. So thank you once again for taking the time to tune into this episode of The Shredding Skeptic, and we will see you next time.